and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Personality here at YouTube, and welcome to another edition of Album of the Week. So, before I get into this week's spotlight, which of course is number 7, I'll definitely get into why I haven't posted a video here on YouTube in a while. And that is due to the fact that 2 weeks ago I was out of internet, and I didn't get internet back until Tuesday. And which of course was due to a bad port whatever that got fucked, I guess, in a way, and Frontier pretty much had to come over here and fix it. But on that Tuesday, when I got internet back, I went on to the forum that I always frequent on, and that is Forces of Steel. I went on there and pretty much found out that Malcolm Young, of course of AC/DC fame, had passed away. And it definitely kind of hit me hard. And if you definitely know my channel, which you do, you know that I am definitely a AC/DC fan. They are definitely were one of my, and still are one of my favorite rock and roll bands. Even though I'm still kind of sketchy on the whole idea with Axl Rose still, and for what the plans are for AC/DC. I'm just not a big fan of what's really whole situation, but with the death of Malcolm Young, it definitely hit me kind of hard. Of course, in a way, it does hit you pretty hard when you know that the reason why Malcolm Young died is because of his diagnosis with dementia, which of course kicked in like 2014, and it was the reason for why he hadn't been in AC/DC and why he had left, and why he never got to play on even on the Rock or Bust album. It definitely pretty sucked, and of course, to me, this was almost, it hit me almost as hard as when Lemmy died back in 2015, and though here, what makes even sadder than Lemmy's death, because at least Lemmy got to play his last show before he died. Malcolm Young, he never got to even play his last show. And he had pretty much been stuck with dementia from 2014 up until this year. So 3 years, pretty much, or for 4 years, he was suffering with it. And and to me, who pretty much grew up almost like pretty much almost every one of you who are of course subscribed to me, they definitely were a big part, especially when it comes to hard rock and heavy metal. So for this special number 7 album of the week spotlight edition, I am spotlighting T.N.T. from AC/DC, which of course was their actual second album. Now, I could have chosen any other album from AC/DC. I could have chosen Highway to Hell. I could have chosen Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. I could have chosen Let There Be Rock. I could have chosen Flick of the Switch. I could have definitely even chosen Ball Breaker. I could have chosen almost any other AC/DC album, but this album is probably the one, and that's probably due to the fact that I was used to this album's American counterpart, which of course this album in 1976 was released in America and the rest of Europe as High Voltage, though of course released with 2 different covers for both the European and American market, so it wouldn't confuse itself from the original Australian album, which of course was the real debut for AC/DC, which was a totally different album than what was released here in the States as High Voltage. Definitely, but the thing is, this album, of course, there is definitely difference with the Australian version here when it was in its original form. The album T.N.T. in some ways is very much just a classic AC/DC album, and it was definitely in some ways kind of one of the first albums, I think, even for like the American and European that first heard of them. It's like they might have done some opening shows, they might have toured maybe for like probably a little bit, but the thing is, I don't think they really got as much airways until that when T.N.T. was released as High Voltage in those parts. And this is just again, like I said, it's a real classic album. It's like almost every one of these songs is like pretty much a radio staple. A Long Way to the Top, the title track on this album, T.N.T, Live Wire, The Jack, which, speaking of The Jack, the song is also very much, definitely is about a whole situation that happened with Malcolm Young. If you know the story, which you probably should already, it was a situation that happened, that he was going to get sued by this young girl or so who was, saying that he had given her AIDS or some sort of STD. And of course, Malcolm, of course, had himself tested to see if he was HIV positive. Of course, it came out that he was negative. So it definitely burnt down that whole situation. But of course, Bon Scott, the late Bon Scott, who of course is no longer around, and we all know the story for that, of course, wrote the song. So in a way, the song is about a situation with Malcolm Young. Still great. Of course, I love the track. Some might not care for it, but I like it. Of course, other songs on there like Can I Sit Next to You, Girl? And of course, the song High Voltage. Almost every one of these songs are pretty much even live staples, whatever. But what's kind of interesting about the Australian version is the fact that it features... This is the first time the song Rocker was ever put on record before it got put on like the American and European versions of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. And of course, it's a classic song. Another track that is pretty much became a live staple during the whole 1970s to even, I probably think until maybe 1980. I don't know when was the last time that track was played, but that definitely was a staple for live shows. And of course, you got the other song on here that never was featured on the American version of this album when it was called High Voltage. Was of course their cover of Chuck Berry's School Days. And of course there's another guy there who of course also died this year. So pretty much you have on this album 3 guys are no longer around, or now we can say 4 because of also George Young, who of course produced this album alongside Harry Vanda. And George Young was definitely another big part of AC/DC and even the whole Albert Productions label, especially with bands such as Rose Tattoo and the Angels and the Choir Boys and those bands. So all in all, this is just all around, this is definitely the album I chose. It's definitely one of those immediate albums when you think of AC/DC, especially for like the Australian. Of course, let me definitely go back to the song Rocker. The song also has a, in terms of like pop culture, I was definitely watching Mad Max a week ago or so. 2 weeks ago, I was watching that and noticed that in the beginning with that Knight Rider character, he of course is quoting the song Rocker. I'm a rock and roller, I'm a rocker, I'm a rocker, I'm a all out of controller, quoting that part in that, and I thought that was definitely quite something, but just it kind of shows how much of an impact this album pretty much had on not only its part of its area of Australia, but also impacted a lot of parts of the world. So still definitely making an example for why the album is very much being spotlighted and why I'm choosing it as my tribute video, or for my tribute whatever to spotlight. So yep, T.N.T, this week's spotlight, and in memory of Malcolm Young. If you've never listened to AC/DC and are even a younger one who has never cared to check them out, this is probably one of those albums that you probably should. The thing is, you can probably find this album as its American port as High Voltage, or you can be like me and fork out $25 or even $30 for a brand new copy of its Australian version as T.N.T, which I did. And the album this is the only album of all the Australian versions that is actually still in print. You can still, even though it's kind of pricey, but it's not nearly as expensive as the others. You can find it on like Walmart even, which is surprising for me, but which says, I think this, for why I'm just babbling on, because I love the babble, especially when it comes to one of my favorite bands, and for a situation that like this as well, and in some ways I kind of knew that it was going to happen. So, yeah. So, I hope you like this spotlight. I know for those who are, you will fall. So for those who like to rock, for those who love my channel, and for those who grew up with this band and who grew up, and for those who heard the news of Malcolm, we all salute you, and we salute you to even the families and whatever of Malcolm Young. So until then, this is Henry Thrasher. I say I'm out. I'll see you later. Play some AC/DC.